Mr. Jonathan, we have a giant in the faith today. I am so excited. I was excited all from the time you told me that he accepted the invitation to be on this podcast. I was so excited. I just couldn't hardly keep my composure.
You and me both, Bishop. You and me both.
Tell them who we have today.
Woo! Okay. Can I read this bio, Bishop?
Yeah, I'm gonna let you. I'm gonna let you read some of it because I know it's a book.
It is the New York Times Sunday morning special. Okay, and I mean this right here has got such good stuff in here, Bishop.
Of course.
Let me read it. Okay, Apostle Thomas Wesley Weeks Sr. was born in Boston, Massachusetts, to the late Bishop and Mrs. Thomas J. Weeks. His education includes receiving a BA in Business Administration and an MA in Urban Affairs from Boston University, a Master's of Divinity from Luther Rice Seminary, Atlanta, Georgia, and later receiving an honorary doctorate degree from the Enon Bible College. Apostle Weeks is a well-known seminarianist and speaker on both the national and international levels. He loves to minister in the areas of marriage and relationships and in the area of leadership. Apostle Weeks is well sought after in these realms of ministry. Apostle Weeks is the presiding prelate of the New Destiny Fellowship International, and he is the pastor of the New Destiny Fellowship. As a great man of faith and father in the Lord, Apostle Weeks heeded the call of God to start a church in Wilmington, Delaware, where he has been pastoring for nearly 3 decades. As presiding prelate, Apostle Weeks' passion is to train and mentor leaders, ministers, and new pastors and their spouses. Apostle Weeks' personal ministry, TWW Senior Ministries, has annual ministerial and leadership conferences that address these concerns and interests. TWW Senior Ministries is also well known for hosting the Praise Power Celebration Conferences. Apostle Weeks is an administrative and mentoring genius. He has exhibited this spiritual gift from God throughout his life. Apostle Weeks, during his career in the Wilmington area as assistant deputy director of the Wilmington Housing Authority Urban Renewal Program in the 1970s, he became Delaware's first director of the State Office of Minority Enterprise, working in that capacity until 1974, when he accepted the position of deputy site manager of the RAND Corporation of the Housing Allowance Program in South Bend, Indiana. After serving 1 year, he became the site manager for the RAND Corporation and chairman of the board. Apostle Weeks serves as the chairman of the Wilmington Housing Authority Board of Commissioners, Wilmington, Delaware, for 7 years. In the community, he is a well-respected leader who has touched the lives of other leaders in church as well as state. He has attained many honorary proclamations and awards from colleges and church organizations, as well as government and community organizations. Apostle Weeks recently received the Alumni Achievement Award from Boston University and served as their 2003 graduation speaker. Apostle Weeks presently serves as the advisory board for Met College of Boston University, Boston, Massachusetts. Under the umbrella of the international organization, the PAW, he was ordained as a bishop in 1987. He first became diocesan of the Caribbean District in 1987, then as diocesan of the New Jersey District Council from 1998 through 1996. From 1996 through 2000, he served as the diocesan of the D.C., Delaware, Maryland District Council. He also served as the PAW International Young People's President, Assistant General Treasurer, and served as the Assistant Presiding Bishop of the PAW and President of Enon Bible College. In the year 2000, Apostle Weeks founded New Destiny Fellowship Organization, a fellowship of churches both nationally and internationally, with almost 100 churches in the United States and over 300 churches overseas. He is an author and has written several books: A Set Time, Don't Leave, Cleave, Pagan Holidays, Altar Survivor, The Road to Greatness, Start Strong, Finish Stronger, Proven Power Principles to Get Things Done, and his current release, Transform Now. Apostle Weeks has a vision for energizing the entire Christian world for global and soul saving. He is a mentor, a father, pastor, and a good friend. He has the greatest wife on this side of glory, Dr. Leona Brown Weeks. She never complains and has been by his side from the very beginning. Apostle Weeks states, she is the reason for my success. She is the apple of my eye. Apostle and Dr. Weeks have been married for 45 years. From this union, they have 2 sons, Thomas and Abdullah. Apostle and his wife have 3 lovely grandchildren, Sydney, Badiah, Saphai, and Zion. Yeah. This is Bishop Thomas Weeks
Senior. Let's give that some respect. Man of God, you have done so much to move the body of Christ forward. You know, I don't know where to begin, but I want to ask you, let me ask you first about your father. What was your father and your parents' impact upon your life? Because I believe your father was also a clergyman as well.
Yeah, he was. My father was a missionary at heart. He founded the church in which he pastored in Boston, Massachusetts. I followed and founded the church in Wilmington, Delaware. But he loved missions, and I guess that's where one of my loves is missions and the work of missions, and it comes from him. He was a lover of the guy, I guess the smaller guy. He used to take me around with him as he went to small churches. I can remember traveling with him all over the place. And I said, I am so glad I ain't called to be a pastor. I am so I went through all of those changes while I was going with him. I admired him. I liked what he was doing. I gave him a pat on the back, but I said, nah, that's not for me. Not really knowing what God had is all in store for me. But as the Lord so deemed and brought me into this certain grace, I found out that that was all a setup. And I thank God that I kind of walk in his flow.
Yes. You know, that is amazing to be able to, you know, when the Sounds of Blackness has been like, where is my daddy? He has a continuity where your father taught you his faith, and you were able to walk out the faith of your father and continue in some ways, whether it's on purpose or indirectly, his legacy, because you're really still practicing the faith of your father and your mother.
In many ways, life ought to be exactly that. A father should always be a pioneer for the son. He ought to be able to cover ground that was left to him, and he's paving ground, making the mistakes, going through all of the necessary kinds of changes so the son can move forward in a great way. Of course, at some particular point, that son will become a pioneer for his son.
Yes.
And we keep on following and building on top of that. If we're ever going to be, we're going to have to, where we are standing or sitting on the shoulders of our Father.
Yeah. You know, I want to say something else about that, about standing on the shoulders of our fathers, and for Apostle Weeks to even have this conversation. So many of us can have this conversation, and there's so many of us that can't have the conversation. And when you look at the scripture, you see the father and son relationship, whether you look at Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but then you look at David, and then you look at David and his sons, and David and Solomon, but you see David and Absalom. Let's talk for a moment about the family dynamics that happen in ministry, because today we see that there's a lot of generations of PK children, and I think that's one conference that probably needs to be had, a PK conference with a couple of therapists, because when you listen to their stories. Well, I shouldn't say their stories. When I listen to my children's stories, they have it almost like they would they were traumatized. And I tell them, I says, you know, you might want to really go stay in the hood for a moment and really learn what real trauma is. And you probably should be very discreet about you talking about you had a hard life because, you know, we brought somebody on vacation with us that was not a family member. You were traumatized by that. I mean, you being a PK kid yourself, you kind of said, "I'm not going to be a minister," and then you end up walking in your father's shoes, and then doing more missionary work than your father did.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. Just let me go back to something that you said, because you know, no matter what realm, what lane you're in, you're traumatized by that lane. When I traveled to Africa,
say that again. Say that again. Everybody need to capture that. Say that again.
Right. No matter what lane that you're in, that lane has enough problems and situations that you will get traumatized in it. And that's important for you for whenever you're complaining. You know, I'm complaining about this because of blah, blah, blah. And then you got to really look around, and the folks who either have it better than you or worse than you, they're being traumatized in their lane. Nobody's getting exempt from this. You know, folks can have billions of dollars. Just look what happened to one of the richest men in the world, just ended up in a divorce. You know, all the stuff's going out in the paper now. And that's got to be some drama and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Nobody escapes it. And so we have to understand we all have it in our lanes. The real point that needs to address is how I'm going to handle whatever is that drama that I got to face, and how I'm going to get on the other side of it. And so wow. I got to focus it on that. And like with your children, you just, as a pastor, you just got to say, listen, they're going to be, and what I say to my sons, listen, after you finish complaining about me, go ask your children what they think about you.
Yes.
and you'll find out that none of us escape that. All of us, no matter how good we think we're treating our children, they'll come up with a whole lot of stuff that, but this or that. And so it's just part of life. It's what we have to pass through.
You know, I was in a part of a program where I was doing some work at a transformative program, and there was a course that we ended up taking, and I recommend pastors to, go somewhere for mental health. I think I'm doing my dissertation on mental health right now at Virginia Union University, and the importance of mental hygiene. And one of the things that they begin to cover in this course, they says that it is in the nature of children, and the nature of children to find fault in their parents. It's the nature of children to look for the defects in their parents. And it's the nature of parents to love their children unconditionally. And I had to sit with that for a moment, because I could tell you all the things I didn't like about my parents, or what I felt like they missed out on. They couldn't, they didn't study enough, so they didn't give me the kind of education, which means they didn't have the kind of life they've had. But then I've been with children that parents were billionaires, and they complained about their parents. I mean, I wish I could have had your father or had your mother. And they sit there and complain they missed one of my football games. And I'm like saying, but that's it. But I get what Bishop Week is saying. That's very powerful, because that needs to be a seminar. Everyone is traumatized in their lane. There is going to be the trauma and the drama in your lane. And when I looked at that, I said, wow. And so I said I was not going to raise my children the way my father raised me, because my father was not there for me, although at the end my father became a member of my church, got saved here, and then passed on. Went on to be with the Lord. But yet, I was like going to all of my children's parent teachers meetings. I had them in like the top schools. I put them, and then when my children got grown, they started complaining, saying, "We were embarrassed with you coming up to the school. You always had an adjutant with you. We thought it was just so wrong. You just did pop-ups at the school. You never let us really become." And I'm like sitting there saying, "Really? Well, let me tell you about my father." So you really have given me something. Everyone is traumatized. Like, you can't give the child the perfect life, because whatever lane you put them in, they're going to make the lane wrong. That's human nature. That is what being human is all about.
Mm-hmm. And reacting to whatever is going on in your lane. Life is going to bring the negatives, and you're going to react to that in whatever that lane is, and you're going to point your finger at somebody. And of course, parents are the easiest things to point your finger at, if it had not been for you. And that's why the Bible clears all of that up. It just says, honor your mother and your father.
Yes.
Honor them. No matter what went on, whatever's due, they, and this is what's important, they perform their assignment.
Yes.
And their assignment was to deliver you to the earth.
You're right. And with that being said, that's where I found the gift of my father, where I could honor my father, is because if my father had been a mentor that I thought he should be to me, I would have lost all the mentors that had their hands on that life that formed me, right? And the other thing is, when I began to realize that my father gave me the gift of a body, that's what I had to become thankful of. And that started happening at the age of about 21. And then when I got into ministry at 23, I started to accept my father and love my father for who he was. At 27, my father stepped foot in my church for the first time. And the first time going to church, unless it was a wedding or funeral, my father didn't go to church anywhere. A prophetic word came in the service. He came down to the altar, gave his heart to the Lord. And it was the first time my father ever hugged me or kissed me. And
let me say you, because what you just said is so important, in that there were a number of hands that had to transpire in your life to make you what you are right now. To have had a different experience, you would be somebody different from who you are right now.
Yeah.
So the Lord in purpose had to give you a father who was hands off.
Yeah.
So he was completing his assignment.
Yeah.
And of course, you looked at it negatively, but the Lord had set it up because he wanted the archbishop to have this kind of an experience, so that he could come forth and be able to be this mouthpiece to the world, given these sets of experience. So what your father did, he completed his assignment to us that delivers you to the world, and we have to honor him for that, no matter what we felt that we went through to get there. But he gave you more than just a physical presence. He gave you his mind, your mental capacity. Yes. There's so much that's caught up in your DNA that's in you. And what you'll notice, the older you get, the more you look like him.
That's right.
In other words, even later in life, your body is still reacting to that DNA that he put in you. And not just his DNA, but it's a lifeline. Because sometimes we may not know it, but we may actually start pursuing the intellect of a great-great-grandfather who needed to pour down into you. And unfortunately, because of our break in our lineage, we're not aware of all of the greatness that's yet up, that goes way, way, way back, that now is playing itself out in you. But all of that was an assignment so that now you can be who you are period.
Yes. And, you know, that is so powerful because to come to the point of accepting that, and that's where I had to begin to start accepting that later on in life. Of course, now I have children, and that I began to learn that acceptance was the end of all suffering. When I can accept, this is my father, this is my family, this is who it was. And then when my children got grown, I thought I would be honored as this great, force in their life, this is my father. And then that coming out party, in my 50s is almost like, what in the world happened? I really wish I could get my investment back. I would have made this a whole different, and yet, and during that time, I had to go get some counseling. I had to go and get some mental health support just to keep from killing someone figuratively and to begin to walk in love. And that's when I began to start to learn. I says, oh my goodness, this whole area, process, parenting, all of this, it just doesn't end, Bishop. And then even in our leading, we have to lead and so many times minister to families. When our families are broken, we have to watch other families become whole, and we live in the brokenness and the acceptance that this is it. Wow. And oftentimes, many times, we as preachers, we have to minister in our trauma, through our trauma, and yet watch other people come to wholeness, while in some ways, we're still waiting for our change to come, if it ever comes.
Well, again, that trauma that you're still living actually becomes somebody else's blessing. Our trauma and even though it's not complete, it's like a bridge. A bridge over water takes a person from one set of circumstances to another set of circumstances, but the bridge never gets down the road, never gets to complete itself way down the road, never gets to travel down there. And for many of us, the Lord allows us to experience something just so that we can be the bridge, to get to be able to minister to folks, to get them from one situation over to the other situation and put them on the right road to get their deliverance, and we watch it play out. But they needed our peace to be able to get there, and that's what we become to them.
Wow. Let's give that a hand. One of the things that I found myself living through, Apostle, is that and I've just gotten delivered in this area about maybe 2 years ago. It's called the sin of looking good. And, I wanted to be the model. Right? And it just doesn't work. It's just too much work. And I called it the sin of looking good, And the more I tried to look good, the worse it became. And I had to begin to start coming into a place of acceptance. Nevertheless, not my will, but thy will be done. And this is something. Let me ask you something. You do a lot of mentoring now. Do you find yourself, is it still 45 years married, or is it 45?
It's actually that resume, I'm going to have to update it. That resume is about 10 years off because I'm actually celebrating my 41st pastoral anniversary. So it's been over 4 decades. And I'm now celebrating, this year will be 55 years of marriage.
Oh my God. Get out of here. No way. But wait a minute. Hold on.
55?
No, we blow the horns in that.
That's that.
Apostle. If I was near him, I would go and kiss his ring. 55 years. The husband of how many wives?
One.
Jonathan, he was with one woman for 55 years.
Listen, one woman, 55 years. I got married when I was 21. I first met her, saw her when I was 12. So you figure that out.
Ooh, I love it. I don't usually get to meet people that, I'm married 42. It's 42 years for me. This feels
wow, that's great.
This is
that's great.
42 years. But I am so glad to be in a room right here in this space, and I am not the senior. I have an example before me. Oh my God, that says so much. That's to be with one woman for 55 years. Jonathan, what do you think about that?
I think that's amazing.
I have some good news for you, Archbishop. I really do. If you go around and notice at certain restaurants, you have to go to certain restaurants that cater to the elderly, and you'll see couples, and you can tell those who have been married a long time, rather than those who may have gotten married the last 10 years of their, coming together. There is after a while, and maybe it might be year 35, year 40. After a while, you really start vibing in that relationship and in that marriage, because you eventually you've learned everything that you were supposed to learn. Basically, I'm me, she.
Yeah.
And that's who I married. I've been with her all this time, and I love her. I love her for who she is. She loves me for who, and we cool. And rather than fuss, we joke. So you just tease one another. You tease rather than going through fuss. You just tease them. You've been eating like that a long time. You talk about change.
Oh my.
And so you go to tease it, and it becomes fun, and they tease you back, and you laugh about it, throw up your hand, and keep on moving. And so it actually, those latter years, and you could tell why couples after been married 50 years, 60 years, that they die almost at the same time.
Yeah.
After a while, we've had a really good shot together. I really don't want to be around here without you. And that's how folks feel.
Yeah, that's now let me ask you something, because I'm big into health. How often do you work out? Because you have maintained your weight. I've watched you from afar, and I really don't know how you. I don't know how you stop the age. It's like you're aging backwards now. I don't know why. But see, I have to remind myself I'm going to be 62 next month, so I have to remind myself that I'm getting closer towards a senior citizen.
No.
No, I'm getting close towards a senior citizen. I'm looking forward to it. I'm 62. I'm not able to retire.
What time is what age?
65.
Oh,
I think it's 60.
I thought it was 62.
No, you get an AARP card at 50.
At 50,
at AARP, you're a senior citizen.
They get you ready.
It's the forerunner.
Well, Reverend Ike used to call. I know because both of them was from Boston. Reverend Ike used to say, he said, when I turned 50, I never forget, he says, "Oh, son, you're just a baby." And I says, "Reverend, I'm 50 years old. I'm a grandfather." He says, "That's the youth of old age."
The youth of old age is 50.
At 50 years old, the youth of old age. Oh. So you know what? My children's generation was calling me an old man, and Reverend Ike and his generation was saying I was still just a baby. Mm. And I'm going to tell you, this is a breath of fresh air to have a black man in his right mind, clarity of thought. No, you got to say that today.
And he's a pastor.
And he's a pastor, but he has clarity of thought, vision, wisdom. This man needs to be celebrated.
He travels all across the world.
But he's not celebrated the way he needs to be celebrated. We need to know, how many countries have you been to?
A lot.
See, that's what I'm saying. But who knows that? there needs to be a documentary
Literally.
on his life, his story. And then, I did not know that he had 100 churches under him, 300 overseas. I mean, that's a lot.
But Bishop, let me say, Bishop Weeks, I've said this on many occasions. As a kid, I wasn't allowed to play basketball, things like that. So my celebrities and my heroes were preachers. Mm-hmm. Bishop Weeks was one of those. I mean, as a young kid, he was probably one of the youngest bishops in PAW in our movement. So, because most of our bishops were old, and back then there was no such thing as young bishop. You had to be over a certain age. So Bishop Weeks was
the youngest bishop at that time.
Youngest, and I wanted to be like Bishop Weeks. I wanted to pose my picture like Bishop Weeks.
Wow.
I wanted to. He was just an icon. We had the Christian Outlook, which was our Christian our church our organization magazine. He was all in the magazine. He was in charge of the college. He was in charge of the young people. And Bishop, what we saw when it came to leadership and staffing, I'm talking about very 21st century staffing back in the 70s. Where we first saw like Bishop Iona Locke and Bishop Wagner and all these individuals. Bishop Weeks was,
light years ahead.
Of course. Years ahead.
And then he left the mark on his son, Bishop Thomas Weeks.
It's a legacy. It's a huge legacy.
The organizational skills of what the work he's done in both of his sons. Because I remember back in the day, I've known both of them. We go back now. We're going back at least, about almost 30 years. Now that I'm thinking about it, because see, when he was doing Praise Power around Memorial Day weekend, during that time, he was bringing together all the who's who and those that were up and coming, the individuals that had potential or hope. He was bringing their voices to the forefront and to the stage and doing these stellar mega conferences. And before there were some of the icons that are out here now, he was already doing that in the community. And then he was also doing something that was rare for us in Pentecostal circles. He was in the marketplace. He was doing things in civic duties and in the community. To think about, you were part of the political process as well. Amen. And he was out of Wilmington, Delaware. You have to ask the question, if it wasn't for Bishop Weeks, would there be a Joe Biden?
You have to ask that question.
You have to ask that question. You have to ask that question. Because you were in Wilmington for how long?
For 40, I was still there, 41 years.
41 years. And how long was President Biden active in the political process there?
Well, he's been active. This is real interesting because I left Boston and came to Wilmington, Delaware, on January 1st, 1973. On January 6th, a newly elected senator was about ready to go to Washington to be sworn in when a car accident killed his wife, and that was Joe Biden.
See what I'm saying? That wasn't coincidental. He was put as the overseer for that state, politically, spiritually, that region. And so when you're looking at this, look at what God is doing, and in the political process, and look at what has evolved, And I'm sure there are stories that he probably can't say publicly, but the impact that he's probably had in the political process of interacting with the affairs of the politics of that area and region.
Huge.
He's a stakeholder.
True. I mean, when we talk about pulpiteers, when we talk about generals, Bishop Weeks,
Churchmen,
a churchman,
class,
a pioneer evangelism. I mean, back in the 70s, I didn't know that we went to other countries. I mean, Bishop Weeks was doing crusades in Japan, Hong Kong,
right.
in Germany. I said, "No, wait, what?
What are black people doing in Japan?"
I wanted to be an adult just so I could be on a crusade. I want to go on a crusade.
Right. When Japan has probably less than 10% Christians in the entire nation.
They were doing major crusades in the 70s and 80s, and young people, I mean hundreds, going into a country and just and working the streets. This is pioneer. This is not everybody saved. Like today, everybody's saved. Right. Back then, nobody was saved. Yeah. And the kind of save that Bishop Weeks was trying to do, that's another kind of save.
Oh, no, you're going to get saved and go down in the name.
In the name.
In the name.
Hey, you coming up, you better speak. And we better hear it, okay?
Wow.
Yeah.
But thank you for this. So let me ask you this. How often you work out, man of God?
Yes. I try to go on we have about, from my house, 2.5 mile track. And I try to do that 3 to 4 times a week.
See what I'm saying?
And that is the basis of what I do. I had a health club that I belonged to that during the winter when it got cold and I didn't feel like walking, I'd go to the health club and walk there. That closed up because of the pandemic. And so my wife suggested to me, which was a good, because I wasn't doing anything with the basement, to fix up the basement and put one of those stationary bikes in there, and during the winter you can do it. So I just received it. I got it in. My son came home, made sure it's all set up and all that kind of stuff. So probably next week I'm going to start cycling and adding that to my walking.
I love it. See, and I have a Peloton bike, and I love it. I was on that thing like 7 days a week. They had begged me to get off of it. I work out that much. Listen, this is we got to go, but this has been refreshing. We've got to get him for a. Well, listen. When are you doing your next pastors conference? I need to come to your pastors conference.
Right now, I don't have one planned. I don't have one scheduled. Right now, I'm working on a Praise Power celebration in October that is going to be online.
Okay.
And we'll probably have the studio set up here and have a few hundred in a studio setting, but it's going to be online. But what I've been working on is what that's going to look like and should look like in the future. And right now, I believe that the Lord, with the pandemic, wiped the slate clean, and for a reason, and has said now to the church, if you want to get the church, folks back into the church, because right now, they're very happy with being home and sending their support, their tithes and offering, sit back at home, watch you. And so churches are going to have a hard time getting back to just 50% of what they had.
Prophesy, man of God. He's prophesying.
That's the truth.
They're going to still have the support. The folks are going to found a new way, just mail it in or go online, send in their monies. But now we have lost them because we lost our way. We lost our way. We became the church of entertainment. And they found out the best way to handle the entertainment church is to watch it.
All right.
And until we get back to being the church of power, they're not coming back.
Yeah. Well, this is definitely a new age, a new way of being, and they're not going back to the workplaces. they're having problems now of people are making more money sitting home than going to work. When you think about what they have to pay for babysitters, lunch money, hair and makeup, gas,
clothing.
They make more money getting unemployment sitting at home. So we are probably in a whole new way of doing things, and even education. I mean, why go sitting in the university or on the campus? I get it. But there's people that are now getting education online and actual viable degrees online and learning. And so the hours that they can be traveling, they're studying and taking courses. So when better is available, then it looks like that the good that we had before is just not good enough. We are learning to have a more excellent way. Well, listen, tell the people, how can they get in contact with you and follow you?
Yes. They can follow me. I have a Facebook page, Thomas Weeks, Senior. If they go there, just Thomas Weeks, they'll be able to come to my page, Bishop Thomas Weeks, and they'll be able to come to my Facebook page, Thomas Weeks for Twitter and for Instagram. And they'll be able to pick me up at Instagram and Twitter and follow. We usually have a daily devotional prayer and some other interesting little tidbits every now and then.
Wow. Well, we'll look forward to hearing more from you. We got to bring you here to the church. Our audience will definitely be getting you. Well, our church now is online, so this will be going out to everybody. But we're going to have to bring you onto the platform to come and share and teach like so many others have done. And we have to bring them together. I want to do something with him with pastors and leaders, though. A voice like this, we need to. How did he last? That could be the seminar. How to last? I mean, do you know how many people start out with us that is no longer here with us?
40 some odd years. In a town like, no offense, Bishop, but Wilmington, Delaware, back in 1970, no good. Yeah. That's like being in South Bend, Indiana. Like,
well, in 1981, I used to go down to Wilmington, Delaware. In 1983, I used to go to a woman by the name of Bishop Flowers. That was in Wilmington, Delaware. She had a church there, and it was a strong, small congregation, but prophetic, because my wife came through that fellowship, and she turned to work over to Pastor Stoner.
Bishop, believe it or not, that church that you went to was originally my church.
What?
I sold it to her.
I used to preach in there all the time.
I sold her that church. I lasted a year and a half in that church. That's the first church I bought. And after a year and a half, we had outgrown it, and we bought another church, and we were in relationship with Bishop Flowers, and I sold the church.
Oh my God!
And Bishop Stoner was her assistant at that time.
Yeah,
and she pretty much carried the church, but they did an excellent job.
Yeah, they had a lot of strong prophets in there. It was a small church, a small congregation, but they prayed, and we would be in there for all-night prayer. All-night prayer, prophesy. You know, you go to church in there at 12 noon, and you're walking out, it's dark outside. I mean, this is the kind of church. This is when church was church. You know what I'm talking about, Bishop.
Right.
Y'all wouldn't stand that today, but I mean, like, this is where you came in there, and they're turning their plates down, and nobody's eating nothing. You know, and you laid up before the Lord until God spoke. But that's how I got my start traveling. They would have me come down there. And one time I was going down there like every Sunday evening. I would leave Jersey, drive down there. But I lost contact with them. I don't know what happened to Bishop Flowers. I heard she moved.
She died. She passed.
She did.
She did pass. Maybe about 3 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 3 years ago. Her son had called me for it, and I sent them a tape with some words on it. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to stay at her home. They would tell you, she would tell you stories about the old saints. So that's how you would hear about stuff about Bishop Mason and some of the other praying saints, and they would just have stories. Those the older saints would tell you stories that would keep you. It was like you was looking at a story. They would just tell you stories about miracles that took place. Like they always had a story of a miracle that happened.
Right. Well, that's what I'm talking about, and we've got to get back to where we're performing the miracles in the church if we're going to want the people back. And we're going to be ending up, if we do so, and those that do, we're going to be ending up what other generations are going to be talking about, and that they're going to remember us because we led the way on that.
Wow. Thank you. Okay, well, let's give the Lord a hand clap. Thank you again, Apostle, for taking this podcast. I'm going to be getting an offering to you. We're going to be supporting your ministry, but we want to thank you for being who you are. And tell your wife I said hello. Tell the family I said hello. They're not going to believe that you were on my show and you tell someone. I was with Bishop Jordan. They're going to sit there and say, you're kidding.
I'm going to tell them it's going to be, and I thank you for asking, and we'll be in contact.
Okay. God bless you and be blessed.
God bless you.